All right, welcome everyone. Today we are diving into a seriously mind-bending explainer. We're taking the precise mechanics of quantum physics, the hard facts of neuroscience, and the incredibly profound depths of Buddhist philosophy, specifically Dhamma, and smashing them all together into one framework. We're calling it the algorithm of forgiveness. So if you've ever struggled with letting go of anger or found yourself stuck in those endless mental loops after an argument, or if you're just wondering how to actually rewrite your own emotional programming, you are in the exact right place. We're going to unpack this whole thing step by step. Let's get right into it.
So right off the bat, we've got to tackle this classic, almost chicken and egg kind of spiritual paradox. Must we love before we forgive? Or do we have to forgive before we can truly love? I know, it sounds like an abstract philosophical riddle, but honestly, how we answer this dictates how we process literally every single conflict in our daily lives. Think about it. Do you force kindness or do you force closure?
If we break this down, you've basically got two opposing camps. First, there's the love-first approach. The idea here is that practicing loving kindness naturally melts the ego, which then leads straight to forgiveness. But there is a pretty massive flaw with that. If you're dealing with real trauma, trying to just force love while you're still holding on to all that negative energy usually creates this kind of pseudo-love. It's fake. It's this fragile layer of kindness covering up deep, unresolved resentment. On the flip side, the forgive first camp says you have to clear the trauma first, sweep up the debris, so to speak, to create the space for love. But the risk there? If you forgive purely logically without any empathy, it frequently leads to cold indifference. You might stop fighting, sure, but your heart is still totally closed off.
So what's the actual solution here? Well, it's what we call the quantum entanglement of the heart. We really need to stop looking at this whole emotional process as some rigid linear sequence. First I do this, then I do that. It doesn't work that way. Forgiving is simply the act of releasing the past, and loving kindness is the act of building the future. And in reality, they're the exact same phenomenon converging right now, in the present moment. They're deeply entangled. When you genuinely forgive, you're inherently showing love to yourself. And when you truly love, you naturally forgive the world. It's a single interbeing mechanism. Now, to truly grasp how this entanglement works mechanically, we need to look at this single phenomenon through three completely different microscopes. Which brings us to Section 1, 3 languages of the mind. We'll be looking at neuroscience, quantum physics, and Dhamma. Let's trace the life cycle of a conflict across these 3 different disciplines. It is pretty wild how perfectly they align. When intense anger flares up, neuroscience tells us your prefrontal cortex has to step in fast to override the amygdala's primitive fight or flight response. That's just a biological fact. Now, in quantum physics, this exact same moment of decision is described as a wave collapse. You are taking an infinite superposition of potential rage and consciously observing it down into a single localized particle of choice. That's a physical reality. And in Dhamma? Well, that biological override and that quantum wave collapse are simply the arising of mindfulness. It's the ultimate truth. We're talking about the exact same mechanism of awareness and control, just spoken in 3 totally different languages. Now, if all that hard science feels a little heavy, just think of it like playing an instrument. Forgiveness is tuning the guitar. Loving kindness is the melody. If you don't release the bitter tension of those strings first, if you don't literally tune your biological and spiritual instrument by forgiving, then any melody you try to play is just going to sound horribly out of tune. You just cannot play the harmonious music of loving kindness on a tightly wound, resentful heart. Okay, so we've got the theory and we've got the mechanics, but how on earth do we actually apply this when someone is right in our face yelling at us or, aggressively attacking us online?
Let's move to Section 2, the bullet-stopping algorithm, code for the modern mind. I want you to think of your mind as a highly advanced computer that's executing a global rescue algorithm. This is actually directly inspired by the ancient 37 factors of enlightenment. Phase 1 is scan and detect. This is where you use mindfulness as a highly sensitive internal sensor to immediately notice when toxic data hits your system. Then we move to Phase 2, which is debug and clean. Here, you're consciously deleting that hate code from your operational memory. Ultimately, you reach Phase 5, the execution core, where you actively and intentionally process peace. By running these steps, we are fundamentally rewriting our internal programming. We're upgrading from a default primitive state of if hate, then attack, to a highly evolved code of if pain, then forgive.
But of course, here's the massive glitch we all run into in the real world: system overload. Literally, the absolute hardest line of code to compile is Phase 1, that initial scan and detect. And why is that? Because we live in an era of unprecedented high-speed data. Our senses are constantly, aggressively bombarded by social media, the 24-hour news cycle, and just general daily stress. Our prefrontal cortex literally overheats. We fail at phase 1 because we simply don't have the processing power available in that split second, so we jump straight into an automatic, toxic reactionary loop. So, how do we actually fix this inevitable system overload? Well, we use what is essentially the ultimate matrix move. It's this profound concept drawn from deep meditation called sannyaya, which loosely translates to neither perception nor non-perception. Honestly, it's a state of fading neutrality. Think of it as a highly advanced mental technique that literally neutralizes linguistic and emotional attacks without you even having to move a muscle to dodge them. Let's contrast this with how we normally handle conflict. Usually, when someone throws a verbal insult to you, you try to dodge it or block it, or you argue back, right? But by doing that, you're actively confirming that you are a target. You are creating friction and resistance. But if you neutralize the bullet using sa'a, you're doing something entirely different. You refuse to assign personal meaning to the insult. You don't perceive it as a threat, but you also don't delusionally pretend the sound waves don't exist. Because you refuse to give the word meaning, it completely loses its targeting system. It dissolves from a harmful, dense particle right back into a harmless wave of empty space. And I promise you, once you master this ability to neutralize rather than fight, your entire worldview shifts.
Which brings us to Section 3, Victory Without a Winner, the Infinity Intersection. Now, this is absolutely crucial. Forgiveness is not a sacrifice, and loving kindness is not giving. Let that sink in for just a second. When you finally forgive someone, you are not sacrificing your pride, you're not surrendering your boundaries, and you're definitely not losing a battle. You are simply detoxifying your own biological and spiritual system. You're just clearing your own cache. And true loving kindness isn't some transactional process where you're giving a piece of yourself away. It's just radiating your natural, unblocked light. It's exactly like the sun just doing what it was built to do. If you want a fun sports metaphor, imagine the banana-curved free kick of forgiveness. When someone deeply wrongs you, you don't stubbornly kick the ball right back in their face just to score a petty point. No way! True forgiveness is like kicking a ball of pure light that curves perfectly and elegantly around the heavy wall of their ego. It completely bypasses their defenses and dissolves into empty space, leaving the entire stadium absolutely stunned by the grace of it. Nobody loses because the conflict simply ceases to exist. Now, what if we took this incredible internal algorithm and scaled it up? What if we applied it to an entire country? Let's zoom out for Section 4, Pangeanism, upgrading society's operating system. Just imagine a wisdom cabinet where the government's literally one and only job is to efficiently remove the societal obstacles that are blocking the public's internal light. We're talking about a massive shift to Pangeanism, which basically means wisdomism. Instead of a traditional defense ministry focused on war, imagine a ministry of inner peace that deploys specialized teams to resolve local conflicts using calming 432 Hz frequencies and mediation. Or imagine a ministry of edutainment that replaces high-stress schools with vibrant wisdom playgrounds. And a ministry of joyful wealth that tracks gross heart awareness instead of gross domestic product. It sounds like a distant utopia, for sure, but it's actually a completely valid alternative paradigm for how we could manage human energy on a macro scale. And what's super fascinating is how we could realistically implement this in our digital spaces right now to spark a sort of mass awakening. Picture this. You're totally heated, you're about to post an angry, vindictive comment online, and your phone's mindful AI intercepts it and flashes a prompt that says, "Warning, this comment will spike your dopamine but drop your wisdom by 50%. Proceed? It's hilarious, right? But that humor is highly intentional. It acts as a brilliant Trojan horse. It temporarily breaks your ego's rigid defenses, makes you chuckle, and instantly pulls your brain out of that primitive amygdala response and right back into the prefrontal cortex. But hey, we don't need to wait for some futuristic government or advanced AI to do this for us. We can start spreading this message in a bottle across our own networks today. First, there's the invitation. We spark genuine curiosity instead of just lecturing people about their anger. Second, the personalization. We relate these deep quantum concepts to everyday stuff, like getting yelled at in traffic or dealing with a rude coworker. And third, the experience. We gently challenge people to actually test that SAM neutralizing technique the very next time their blood boils. We're planting these tiny subconscious seeds of wisdom that are programmed to activate exactly when people need them most. So I'll leave you with this. Are you ready to rewrite your internal code and step into the infinity intersection? The very next time a bullet of toxic language comes your way, don't tense up and try to dodge it. Don't build a wall and try to fight it. Just let it pass harmlessly right through the empty space of your awareness. Tune your guitar, radiate your natural light, and just let the algorithm of forgiveness run its course. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible framework with me today.